Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Jen GTM Show, the place where we break down what's actually working in GTM across SaaS, cloud, and overall the broader tech ecosystem. Today, I'm really thrilled to have someone who sits at the center of the most important transformation, I would say, that's happening in the enterprise technology. Vijay, who's the country head for AWS, BFSI, and FinTech GTM. Thank you, Vijay, for joining me here on the studio. So, if you're building in financial services, selling to BFSI, or trying to understand how agentic AI is really reshaping the enterprise workflows, this is the conversation that you want to listen into for direction or for clarity, and to really get a real sense of where the market is heading. So, Vijay, I want to start with the big picture first. So, across industries, especially in BFSI, I've worked with BFSI, ISVs, and BFSI partners as well. So, I mean, we're all seeing a massive shift, from insights into autonomous actions and all that, right? So, and agentic AI is changing a lot of that. So, tell me what's happening in that world, Vijay.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Firstly, thank you for having me here, and it's always a pleasure to join you in a conversation. Right, I'm looking forward to the discussion that we have coming up. Absolutely, I think real feel right after interacting with a lot of our customers and partners is that we are actually at a pivotal moment. In terms of the technology shifts that are happening, and I'm saying that for a bunch of reasons. I think we were in an era, right, where it was traditional AI and ML driven, and a lot of predictions and insights and dashboards and all of that. We have leapfrogged, honestly, right? And we have leapfrogged into something which is almost magical, right? If you were to think about it, you are now talking of autonomous agents which can plan, decide, execute, iterate, and learn. Right, and in from and do it better and better every single time that they do it. Right, again, the possibilities are enormous. Right, and I am super excited by the opportunities that we have ahead of us. Right, and it's happened because of bunch of reasons. Right, like the first thing is that now there is clear evidence that you can get ROI through these. Right, like traditional business workflows right now can be managed by agents.
Mm-hmm.
Agents can handle a lot of complexity which is typically there in enterprises. Right, and that complexity can be broken down into tasks that can be done by a bunch of agents. Those agents can be orchestrated, right, in a manner which the enterprise wants in terms of outcomes. So I think the enterprise complexity can be handled. So that's the clear thing that's happening right now. And very importantly, right, 2022 saw a pivotal moment in technology. I think, thanks to OpenAI and ChatGPT, we now have tech stacks which have matured so tremendously, right? I mean, if you look at the large language models, if you look at, the cloud maturity that has happened to handle it, you look at the infrastructure capacity that has come in to drive these investments, right? If you look at the thought process maturity that is still happening, but there is increasing acceptance that yes, we can use agentic AI to solve our business problems. I think that is evolving. And the
Yeah.
last bit I see is that at the end of the day, the human is not going away anywhere, right? Like the human is very much there, right? People understand that these are high stakes decisions which involve what we call human in the loop, right? So the human is there to look at agent actions, to kind of take calls where there is a need for judgment, decision making, sometimes even intuition. I think that those are the parts that the human comes in. The parts which are repeatable, monotonous, right, which are the heavy lifting is something that can be given to agents, right? So there's a clear demarcation of what tasks the agents are doing, what tasks the humans are doing, right? So I think a combination of all of these, Jen, is what is kind of leading to this spurt in interest and activity, and the kind of opportunities that are ahead of us.
I couldn't agree more. I think, as you mentioned, the timing is perfect, I think, because I think the stack is finally matured. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this question, Vijay. So, from your vantage point at AWS, why is agentic AI so much importance in the enterprise segment right now? and especially, what's driving the urgency across, BFSI and fintech as well.
Yeah. So I think specific to BFSI and fintech, what was happening, Jen, was that so these were areas which were always and will always continue to be under regulatory purview, right? So the moment a space is under regulatory purview, automatically that space has a lot of documents available, lot of SOPs available, lot of processes
Mhm.
available which are documented in a structured fashion. And
Mhm.
for an AI leap, that's music to the ears, right? Like, because you cannot feed in all those documents and data and information into the models which can crunch it and which can then deliver to you the results that you want, right? Like, so in some sense, BFSI naturally lends itself to that, to an AI leapfrogging. I think that's the first bit, Jen. The second
Mhm.
bit is that if you look at compliance, right, like the cost of compliance is only increasing, right? I mean, the look at the challenges that the financial institutions are facing to comply, to meet the to meet the regulatory overheads, to invest in compliance. They are going to need more and more AI tools to help them do that, right? Like, because you cannot add manual workforce linearly to deal with increasing compliance costs, right? Like, it has to be done through agents, it has to be done autonomously. So that's a second thing, that's really driving adoption, from a BFSI standpoint. I think the regulatory needs are pushing for more AI adoption to meet those costs. The
Mhm.
third thing is that the data foundations are there in place, right? Now they may not be perfect, right? They would need fine tuning, but all financial institutions have had to deal with a mix of data sources which are there, right? A mix of them which come together to kind of orchestrate the workflows and so on. So they are using agentic AI now, and we are seeing tremendous use cases, right? We are seeing use cases across lending, use cases across microfinance, use cases across claims underwriting and insurance, use cases where retail customers for outbound sales calls, the AI voice bots are doing that. I think the possibilities are just exploding, and I think it's a sector where people are realizing that the moment one is able to cross the threshold in terms of getting the ROI, it is, I mean, those benefits are going to really go down to your margins, right? You're going to see tangible margin improvements happening, and that's what people are betting on, and that's what we are working closely with our customers and our partners to drive this cycle from a POC to a to a production, to an iteration, to make it a scalable production. I think that is what we are driving, in especially in BFSI.
God, you talked about adoption, right? So I want to bring in the angle of ISVs here. So
Yeah.
the one thing I've noticed is, working with the BFSI aligned ISVs, is that the conversation has really shifted dramatically, in the last, like I would say, 12 or 18 months, right? As you mentioned, I do agree. We are no longer in the pilot and POC era. We've moved to a kind of regulated production era, I would say, right? So I'd love to hear your take on what patterns are you seeing across, the customers you work with, and again, how is agentic AI adoption evolving specifically in BFSI?
Yeah, yeah, and Jen, I think you've been an ISV and SaaS expert yourself for many years, and you'll relate to what I'm going to say. I think traditional SaaS sold capabilities, right? I think where the opportunity is right now is to sell business outcomes. Okay, so when you're able to position your capabilities as business outcomes, I think there is going to be a possibility of a lot of adoption. I'll give you some examples, right? Like, so let's say you're building agents around specific workflows. So let's say those workflows help you close your loans faster, right? Like, let's say you bring down your TAT by 40%, or you're reducing your claims cost by 30%, or you're able to improve your lead generation capability by 20%. I think those are tangible ways by which you can position your products, right? And that is the shift that when ISVs make in this agentic world, they're going to see a lot of results, because the customers want outcomes, right? So no, they
Yep.
don't want features, they don't want the bells and whistles around this incremental feature addition. They want outcomes, right? And if you're able to
Yeah.
position it around outcomes, you're going to see a lot of results. The second bit is that domain capability, right? Like, so I think generic positioning, saying that I kind of straddle across sectors, etc., will only get ISVs till a certain way. Positioning which is specific to domains, right? Like, so
Mhm.
let's say a financial services specific product, or a retail specific product, or a healthcare specific product is going to be increasingly important, because domain awareness and strength is going to be important to even let the Gen AI agents deploy the way you want it, right? Like, so if just getting down to some fundamentals, these agents work on knowledge bases, right? Knowledge bases have to be continuously refined, right? They have to be fed on a lot of training data which has to be domain specific, and in a lot of cases company specific. Company specific, we will come to the customer, but domain specific has to be incorporated even at the time of an offering build, right? And the successful SaaS firms will figure this out, and they will start doing it. Right, they will start doing it. We are seeing instances, let's say even in pharma or healthcare, where people are building in that domain capability, right? And they are starting to see successful outcomes. I think that's the second point I really want to mention. That domain capability is going to be important. Then I think we are really looking at co-creating, right? Like, so I think it is important for SaaS firms, startups, ISVs, whatever, right, to get this mentality that they are going to have to co-create with their customers. It's not going to be something that I build once, I sell, and I forget about it. Right? Like, it, because there is a continuous cycle of building, deploying, learning, because it's not going to be 100% perfect at the start, iterating, making your product better, and that cycle will continue. Right? Because that's the beauty of agents, right? Agents can learn, right? And they can keep getting better and better. So until a point where you actually make it almost close to a perfect product, you are going to have to learn with enterprises, right? And that's the important thing that I think SaaS firms have to know, right? So if I were to just kind of drill down right into just three elements, right? I think the first thing is in terms of being able to position your product as outcomes. Okay. Second thing is in terms of going heavy in terms of your domain understanding and awareness and building that depth. Third is, from a mindset standpoint, willing to co-create with your customers, right? Learn from what the customers are saying. I think these three things are going to be very important for SaaS in this agentic AI driven world. And when they get these three things right, I think they're going to see a lot of wins.
Got it. I love the point that you touch base on, which is business outcomes, right? Because not only customers, every partner is looking for business outcomes. They want to prove
Yes.
their ROI to their management and so on. So shifting the conversation to the fintech innovators or the builders, I couldn't agree more with you that agentic AI is forcing, I would say, like a GTM reset, right? So it's about delivering business outcomes. Oh, I want to put another question in front of you, like how can ISVs and startups, particularly, best leverage agentic
Hmm.
solutions in their GTM motion, and
Yeah.
what separates the one who succeed in BFSI from the ones who struggle?
Got it. Yeah, that's a great question, actually, right? Like, because leveraging GTM, and you are a GTM expert yourself, right, is super critical for them to succeed. Right. I think the first thing to to for them to approach is that it is not a single player game. Right? What I mean by that is that startups, our SaaS providers, ISVs, they need to partner, to be able to deliver the solutions, right? And that partnership mindset, mentality, willingness is important, right? And partnerships could be with hyperscalers, could be with system integrators, could be with data platforms, could be any kind of partnerships, right? Like, but it's important to have that mindset that I am going to do this as a collaborative exercise, so that as an ISV, and when I'm delivering this solution, it's best in class, right? I'm commanding the best of breed from different entities in this ecosystem so that I can serve my customer the best. right? So I think that is going to be important, from a GTM standpoint. And what also happens is that it builds trust and credibility, right? I mean, especially, when one is in a marketplace, one is competing with a lot of other SaaS providers. Trust and credibility are super important factors to drive adoption, right? And you would know it very well that that is what lends distribution at scale. Okay, so I
Agree,
think
agree.
yeah, so I think that is going to be important. I think the other thing is in terms of uh, uh, you know uh, governance, right? Like, so I think building in governance, is important, especially in an AI world, right? What we are seeing is that entities, and I'm talking of ISVs and SaaS entities and startups, etc., which have the mindset that governance is not a tax, right? It's not a tax on innovation. It is actually something that can accelerate my innovation, right? Like, the ones which have that mindset s- build stronger platforms, right? Build more
Mhm.
credible platforms, right? Build systems that build in governance by design. Okay, and that's something that I keep telling, my customers, that governance is not just an intent, right? And it's not just about SOPs and Excel sheets which just kind of lie there somewhere. It has to be built into your architecture, right? And
Right.
especially, when you're partnering with AWS, we allow you to build that into your architecture, right? It's like, it's security by design, as we call it. So whether it's in terms of your identity and access managements, your configurations, your cloud watches, your signals, your inbuilt security features, we allow that to be built in, right? And that is when actually AI systems succeed, and that is when actually the best results are also got from, such AI partners, right? And I think it is important to build that mindset, Jen.
I love how you took the conversation to the governance
Mm. Yeah,
section. So
yeah,
I think that's something that every enterprise leader, really cares about. I think autonomy without accountability is a risk, and I
yeah,
think accountability without autonomy is inertia, right? But I think, as you
yeah,
said, the magic is in the middle, where the governance becomes really an enabler and not a blocker, right? And you, and coming from AWS, and also me coming from being an ex-Amazonian, we know
yeah.
that AWS has a very strong point on the view on governance, right? So I want to put this question in front of you, Vijay. How do you think about balancing autonomy with accountability when it comes to agentic AI? And particularly, how should BFSI leaders approach governance so it accelerates innovation instead of slowing it down?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jen, right? And I think some of the common traps that people get into is in thinking of autonomy in black and white, right? And in terms of, like, when we think of agents, it is not zero or one. Okay, so it is possible to have a tiered approach, right? What do I mean by that? So let's say, one is looking at deploying autonomous agents to deal a bunch of tasks, right? Now, those tasks, workflows, actions, etc., will all fall in a risk return paradigm, right? Like, so if you were to map it out, some of them will be very low risk repeatable tasks which hardly need any supervision, right? And and even if something goes, or you can reverse it, right? What in Amazon, as you know, we call it as a two-way door decision, right? Like, so right,
Mhm.
so those agents, right, it is important to allow them to function autonomously, right? That's the first step. So think, let's say, in a BFSI environment, right? Let's say the payment wallet of a customer, there is some activity which seems suspicious, from the bank's control standpoint. So
Mhm.
the bank decides to temporarily block it to save the customer from potential fraud. Like, that's like a low risk two-way door decision where you can just let agents do it. The agent can deduct the possible fraud and then stop it then and there. Let's go to the next tier, right? Like, where these are important decisions, but it can be done autonomously and with some review by humans. So,
Mhm.
let's say you talk about country to country transfers. Let's say it's a B2B payment which is happening. all right, there is a sudden change in invoice details, which has come up, right? Like, so the payment is getting directed to another vendor. The agents can decide to put that payment on hold, subject to a human review,
Mm-hmm.
right? Subject to human review, where the humans are actually coming in, and then the they are supervising that action to see, okay, now does this really merit a block? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's a human review. So that's like the next level, right? Where you're kind of in between, you're not fully autonomous, right? You're not fully human, you're kind of in between, right? Where there is a human in the loop to review. The last bit, are things, which actually need a lot of judgment, discretion, by humans. So let's say, the task at hand is to permanently block a customer from accessing a particular portal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those need human judgment, because the humans would know the history of the relationship with the customer, the sensitivities in terms of the impact that it could cause, right? And some of the soft aspects that would never have been documented, right? So that needs a human for sure to even make that call, right? So autonomy can be tiered, right? And very interestingly, if you were to think about it from a banking financial services angle, they always had this mentality that risk could be tiered. And
Mm.
if you think about it, smaller loans would automatically get approved. The medium ticket loans, would go for a mid-level manager to approve, and the higher ticket loans would go all the way up, right? Like, so that risk mentality was always ingrained in a BFSI scenario. All we are saying is take that outlook, put it into an agentic system thought process as well, right? And
Right.
then you will be able to mix this agents, and you'll be able to kind of figure out the right level of autonomy along with accountability, right? See, accountability is super paramount, Jen. No
Mm.
matter what agentic systems one builds, at the end of the day, building an accountability is super critical, because there is a lot of stake. We are talking of money in terms of billions of dollars. We are talking of consumer trust. We are talking of potentially millions of customers, who might get impacted. So it's very important to build accountability, and the right set of entities, who are building these systems, know this from the start, right? So they build this in right from the beginning. So, just kind of want to, leave that message saying that, please let agents function autonomously. Yes, that is part of getting your ROI, but it's very important to build in accountability, right? Treat that as hygiene, and make sure that, whenever it comes to high stakes ethical related decisions, decisions which need judgment, intuition, there are humans, which need to be there, and which need to be part of, the systems that you're building, right? So that's really the message that I want to give. Yeah.
Love it. Great message, Vijay. This has
Yeah.
been a really a rich conversation. So just to bring us home, right, what we have covered today is why agentic AI matters now, and you walked us through in terms of how BFSI is really adopting it. We touched base on ISVs, what ISVs need to do to win in this one. And lastly, I think you gave a very good overview on why governance is the kind of the new innovation engine, right? So before we wrap up, I would love to give you the last word and put another
Yeah.
question in front of you. So, what's one piece of advice you would give, Vijay, for BFSI leaders or ISVs who want to really stay ahead of the shift and build for the next decade?
Yeah. I think, when one is taking a long term view, let's say a decadal view, right? Especially given the number of changes that are happening in front of us, I think it's important to get three aspects very right. I think the first aspect is data, right? I think data is one of those elements which, in a rush to building AI systems, people take it for granted. But actually, data, the quality of data becomes the backbone for successful ROI in AI, right? And it's very important not to miss that. Okay, so we have seen that, organizations which spend time, and when I say organizations, this is customers as well as partners, right? Because partners are helping customers do this, right? Like, so which spend time in getting data cleaned up, usable, not fragmented, right? And relying on, single sources of truth, right? So that the data is reliable, right, they get the best AI results, right? And it's important to do this in sequence, right? And not, let's put the AI in some sense machine first and then figure out the data, right? Like, because it leads to then iterations which could have been avoided, right? So I think the first thing is, is very important to kind of get data right. Second is, I think, speed of iteration. Okay, so it is for sure that AI systems will learn, right? And they will make mistakes at the beginning as well, right? It's important to kind of accept that. It is important to iterate fast and improve upon that and deliver better, so that the expected result happens in the shortest possible time, right? Like, the speed of iteration becomes important. So so the actual entities which win, whether it could be an ISV or a SaaS venture or any startup, is that, the learning loops are important, and you need to shift fast and learn from what the agents are trying to tell you, right? So the second thing is extremely important. The third bit, right, is to build AI responsibly. Okay,
Mm.
so that is going to really demarcate the ones who are in a hurry to build vis-a-vis the ones who will stand for the long term. And since, the question was in terms of, if you take a 10-year view, right, how
Mm.
should one build? It's very
Mm-hmm.
important to build with auditability, with guardrails, and the right set of responsible AI controls, right? Like, because one, that will build the trust and credibility with customers. Second, and this is important, especially from a BFSI and fintech context, right, is in terms of explainability, right?
Mm.
Today, regulators want to know why you did what you did, right? Even if the person addressing that is an agent, right? Like, so why did agents do what they did, right? So being able to capture that, explain it, will be important, right? So if I were to just distill it into three messages. First is in terms of getting data right and the quality of data. Second
Mm-hmm.
is in terms of, how fast one is able to iterate and making sure that one is learning continuously. Third is in terms of making sure that observability, governance, and auditability are placed at the highest level of priority when one is building these systems.
Awesome. Yeah. Vijay,
Yeah.
thank you for joining me, and for bringing such clarity to a space that's evolving incredibly fast, I would say, So again, big thank you from me. So for everyone listening, so if you are building in BFSI, fintech, or agentic AI, this is your moment. The shift from insights to autonomous action is here. And the companies that lean in early will define the next generation of financial services. Again, thanks for tuning in to the Jen GTM show. I will see you in the next episode.